It feels like it was certainly days ago, if not a week ago, that I was warning you that these paramilitaries in Portland, Oregon were just step one in a sort of trial balloon for Donald Trump to deploy federal troops to more cities against the desires of state and local authorities, against the desires of mayors. But that was yesterday. It was just 16, 17 hours ago since our clip published about these paramilitaries in Portland being just step like zero point 0.5. And Donald Trump yesterday announced a plan to deploy more troops to the city of Chicago now, directly counter to the desires of the mayor, Lori Lightfoot. So let's take a look first at what Donald Trump said yesterday announcing this.
Every American, no matter their income, their race, or their zip code, should be able to walk their city streets free from violence and free from fear. For this reason, today, I am announcing that the Department of Justice will immediately surge federal law enforcement to the city of Chicago. The FBI, ATF, DEA, U.S. Marshal Service, and Homeland Security will together be sending hundreds of skilled law enforcement officers to Chicago to help drive down violent crime. And murderers and violent criminals are breaking a wide range of federal laws. We have that. It's as wide as it can be. We will find them, arrest them, and prosecute them. They will be in jail for many years to come.
Now, there are about 4 or 5 different issues here. So first, let's deal with the propaganda optics. This idea of crime in liberal Democrat cities, as Trump likes to say, is being used to justify Donald Trump's reelection. Now, you might wonder, well, hold on, that doesn't seem obvious. Like crime in liberal Democrat cities, Trump reelection, paramilitaries in the middle. What's the path? The path is weak Democrats who run liberal Democrat cities aren't about law and order. And you're going to get more of this if Joe Biden were to win. Now, on the other hand, you've got Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the law and order guy. He won't hesitate to send in the troops, not metaphorically, but literally, to enforce the law, as they say. Now, there's a lot missing from this narrative. First of all, remember that there's an urban-rural divide in the United States. So when we hear the right say, look at all these cities with high crime that are all run by Democrats. Well, remember, crime tends to be where you have people in greater population density. So by definition, the crime is mostly going to be in cities, and cities are more liberal than rural areas. So you are disproportionately going to have Democrats running cities, both cities that have higher crime and lower crime. So it's essentially a non-factor, but it's being used at number one to start the propaganda. Now, what's also missing from this narrative is that right now we have a huge amount of economic desperation. We have every week, we have 2 to 10 times the new unemployment claims that previously were the record. Remember, the record previously was like 650, 675,000 jobless claims in a week. We've had anywhere from, 1.3 million to 6.5 million claims per week for the last 16, 17 weeks of this pandemic. So we have the economic destruction of coronavirus, which, yes, partially relates to Donald Trump's failed response, which is also a factor in the desperation we are seeing that is leading to some crime. And then, at least in Portland, part of the escalation in tensions and violence is because of these unbadged paramilitaries showing up against the desires of local authorities and throwing people into unmarked vans. And that's also part of the play here. So the idea is send in troops to cause and foment confrontations in order to then justify saying, well, we've got to send them to Chicago as well, because look at what happened in Portland. Well, part of what happened in Portland is because you sent in the troops. Now, I already went over the legal part yesterday, but it bears some repeating in case people see this clip and not that clip. The statute that the Trump administration is citing as what gives them the right to do this very clearly says that this authority, I believe it's 40 U.S. Code 1315, but I may be misremembering. It says the authority to send in federal law enforcement is unilaterally is limited to protecting buildings that are either owned by the federal government or a building that the federal government is using for an office. So there might be a local landlord that owns a building, but there's some federal government office that is in there. That is the limit of what the federal government can go in and do. Now, if they want to go beyond federal property, they may seek to get agreement with state and local authorities. They can work concurrently with state and local authorities if state and local authorities want. That's not what's happening in Portland. Portland and now Chicago, the mayors do not want them there. They are not working with local law enforcement. So their legal justification is absolutely and completely bogus. Now let's step back for a second. If this was happening in a different country, there are many prior administration, both Republicans and Democrats, that would say we can't allow that to happen in another country. Here is Donald Trump. And I'm not saying we would send in our troops to stop it in another country, but we would speak out and say that's not okay. Here is Donald Trump doing this himself domestically. Okay, so understand the contrast here. Every conservative, as much as every liberal, should be disgusted by this. And as I've said before, we're really 6 weeks from the election in the sense that the first early ballots and absentee ballots can start coming in a few states in 6 weeks. So this is a strategy from a desperate president to create chaos and use the chaos he creates to justify keeping the armed troops, sending in more armed troops in major cities up through to and including the election in order to intimidate voters, to incite Trump supporters, to lay the groundwork to then question the results of the election. Now, there's a lot there. Not every aspect of that will necessarily happen, but that's the big picture of why this is happening. This is exactly what I said yesterday and Monday and late last week was going to happen. And we're now going from just Portland to Portland and Chicago. And there's discussions of more cities as well. So this is not a test, guys. This is no joke. This is it. This is no longer the rehearsal. It's happening right now. And I said in a segment on Tuesday that a desperate Trump is a dangerous Trump. We are seeing that front and center right now. And this is about so much more than just this election. This is about so much more than sort of acute Republican hypocrisy. This is about morality. This is about the Constitution, which the right claims to hold almost as a sacred text. This is about states' rights being violated, in fact. This is about a whole bunch of things that the right claims to care about. And by the way, you know, if I ignore this last bit of a dog whistle, I would not be thorough. Chicago is part of the dog whistle, right? Because Republicans for years have been sort of using this dog whistle imagery of dangerous, violent black urban youths in Chicago. Sending the troops there next is part of the dog whistle to continue inciting those exact same images. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. It is dog whistle politics. It is a man acting out of desperation. And I would be wrong if I said it definitely won't work. There's a chance, and that's why this is so important. There's a chance that not only will this be morally wrong and legally wrong, there's a chance that this actually will help Donald Trump tweeting, this is what, you know, images from Portland saying, this is what Joe Biden's America would look like. Now, what's crazy is it's actually Trump's America. But this is the type of imagery that actually can work. It's very ugly. Listen, we saw, I mean, when it looked like Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel was maybe going to go down, this was years ago now, not in the most recent election. It was this type of, this exact same type of imagery and fear mongering that ultimately got him reelected. Okay, so writing this off as it definitely won't work is not right. We would be wrong to do that. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm on Twitter at DPakman. We have a lot of things to go over with you today, so we're keeping this first part of the show a little shorter. I accidentally clapped there. That was weird. And we will be right back momentarily with so much more that we have to discuss today. If you are anything like me, you probably aren't thrilled with the idea of going into a doctor's office right now. And thankfully, there's a practical and affordable way to take control of your health and get personalized care from the comfort of your home. It's a service called SteadyMD. They're one of our sponsors. You take a quiz, you get matched with a licensed primary care physician who understands your health needs. You have a 1-hour video call with your new doctor. You establish a meaningful relationship with them. And after that, your doctor is available to you anytime by text, phone, or video chat. This is not a random doctor on call. Each doctor at SteadyMD has a limited number of patients, so they actually have time to listen to you. You get the personal attention that you deserve. They can do almost everything an in-person doctor can do: perform medical evaluations, talk to you about health concerns, send prescriptions to your home or local pharmacy, and anything they can't do online, they'll quickly set you up with an in-person provider to do, things like blood tests, as an example. You don't need insurance. It's only $99 a month with no other fees or copays. There are so many practical advantages to using SteadyMD for primary care, and it's also so much more affordable. Go to steadymd.com/Pakman to take the free quiz, see which doctor is right for you. I took their quiz. They matched me with a doctor who specializes in my particular health needs and situation. The doctor they gave me is a really perfect fit for me and my medical needs. There's no risk, no commitment to get started. Just click the link right underneath this video.